Welcome! Have you ever put everything aside for a sport you were playing or a sport your child or sibling has played? If you answered yes, then stay tuned. If you answer no, then you should still stay tuned. Today we are going to discuss the evolution of sports and look into how sports have embedded themselves into the cultures of many societies. Do sports dictate our everyday behavior? If so, did ancient Greco-Rome have any impact on this? My goal is to explore the beauty of sports while concerning myself with its possibly negative impact on our cultures and societies in modern day, and perhaps back in ancient times. The ancient Greeks must have had some leeway into sports, and we can only guess that it wasn't a leap into bloody football or professional basketball. Of course, they started simple with horse riding. Believe it or not, they were pretty serious about it. We see the seriousness stated in Homer's Iliad. Step it up, you two. Pull as fast as you can. I'm not telling you to catch those horses of Diomedes. Here, we see how serious they took horse riding by the demands given to the horse rider. This reminded me a lot of a modern-day father telling his child to, quote, get back into the game, or, quote, work harder. The biggest evolution of sports in ancient Greco-Rome was the Olympics. The Olympics were the first major sporting event in ancient times, and they really set an intense vibe on life culture regarding sports. Hundreds of thousands of Greeks and Romans would gather to watch these games be played, and indeed, it impacted life culture. The Greeks spent day in and day out coming up with rules and regulations for the Olympics, and thus really embedded the Olympics into their culture. Running soon became one of the most popular events in the Olympics, so much so that Plato wrote really in depth on the rules and laws for it. Plato states, quote, the herald in the Olympic Games, as you know, first announced just as he does now to us, end quote. Here we see Plato paying so much attention to detail, as if this were the laws for voting rights. I mean, these Greeks really cared about their Olympics, and I think we really underestimate them in our modern world. However, there is a clear parallel in passion for sports between the two times, and that is what I'm going to explore next. Shifting gears into modern day, it seems really evident in our world that sports have become part of people's decision-making and life scheduling. For example, sports fans have really become passionate about the professional sports teams in their city and for their children. I specifically want to discuss basketball. When LeBron James decided to sign with the Miami Heat in 2010, Cleveland fans took this to an extreme. Fans began turning against LeBron and really disrespecting him as a person, so much so that they were burning his jersey. James took it upon himself to write a letter to his fans in Cleveland. In a literature review of the letter, the writers state, quote, the rising expectation for athletes to publicly address their alleged sins has produced an increased level of importance in understanding the role of image repair in sports-public relations in particular, end quote. It is quite interesting that LeBron's move was considered a sin. Sin is usually a very powerful term used to describe something bad someone did. And now we use it as a way to describe a professional basketball player's decision to essentially try something new. Yet, Cleveland fans took this as a betrayal. Another part of basketball which fans have embedded into their culture is the NCAA March Madness tournament. Fans get so serious about this that they make brackets which predict who they think will win. Rory Smead describes it as, quote, these contests usually charge the participants with the Herculean task of correctly predicting at the outset of the tournament the winner of every game. The difficulty of this task and the inevitable surprises of the tournament give weight to the tournament's other name, quote, March Madness, end quote. People take this so seriously that they bet their own money, and Smead describes it as Herculean. Fans let this tournament impact their lives in more ways than one could ever predict. When you really think about it, it seems that sports have always been a big part of people's lives. Even in ancient Greco-Rome, people came from all over to watch the Olympics and cheer the athletes competing. So, the parallel is that fans have always cared and been passionate about sports. However, what is different now is that people really let sports impact their culture. The LeBron James jersey burning and March Madness gambling have truly showed that fans care so much about sports. Looking at sports as more than just sports is really interesting because sports can teach us so much for the best. On the other hand, sometimes we let sports impact our behaviors for the worst and we don't see it happening. Overall, people should continue to enjoy sports, but it is important that fans don't mix their personal lives with sports and make sure sporting events don't affect their personal behavior.